Thanks for joining in, everybody. This episode we are talking about a movie that stars Cameron Mitchell, Pamela Forden, Wesley Ear, Nicholas Bevy, and directed by Dennis Donnelly. And we're talking about a movie that is almost as old as the two of us. We're going back to 1978. Well, at least I hope we are, and we're not talking about like the 2014 or whatever, 2004 version. And we are talking about the Toolbox Murders.
This is one of those classic movies that I think like any slasher fan has at least heard about. You may not have seen it, but you know that it exists. It's I remember... Again, this is going back to the old days, the early 80s, mid 80s, whatever. This is one of those mom and pop video store forbidden films, you know. And I don't know if you remember seeing it back then, but I remember, coming across it here and there. And it was one of those movies where there were some video stores that didn't have it, but there were some that did. And I remember finding it and like, oh, Toolbox Murders, interesting, and seeing the cover art and reading the back, and it just kind of had that sort of forbidden feeling, like, ooh, this is something I probably shouldn't watch.
Yeah, I don't really remember it from back in the day, but I do remember, well, not remember, but this is definitely one of those ones that comes up from time to time, especially now. In various groups online and stuff, people are like, ooh, the Toolbox Murders. But it's definitely one that I had not seen when I was a youngster. This is one of those ones that had always escaped me until we decided to do it for the show, and then I finally gave it a watch then.
Yeah, I never saw it back in the day. Never saw any of it. Never saw any footage or anything of this film. All I saw growing up, in the 80s and 90s was the cover art. And I remember seeing it and like, oh, wow, it's a slasher movie. I've never heard of it. I want to see this. And again, it goes back to like, if you got to think back, go back to the old school days of the video store, and, you go in and you got to find that horror section, and you creep over to that corner area where, you feel like kind of guilty looking in there because people are like, whoa, that guy's looking in the horror section. And the Toolbox Murders was one of those films that in some places, some of these mom and pop places, it was there. And I remember like looking at the cover art and knowing it was, a slasher film. And, but yeah, never got to see it, never got to rent it, never saw it on, TV or cable or anything like that. So I don't think I saw, well, I know for a fact I didn't see the whole thing all the way through until we decided to review this, but I did see kind of like a greatest hits compilation of it, probably on YouTube or something, like, I don't know, somewhere I saw like some of the kills and that kind of thing. So didn't know fully what the storyline was going to be, but I think I hit all the major areas of the film going into it, so it wasn't a complete shock or anything.
This one, even though it's technically listed as a slasher movie, this came out, well, I think this actually came out before Halloween.
Did it really?
Find the actual release date. I mean, this one is not one of those ones, anyway, that copies Halloween by any stretch of the imagination. This is not when you hear like late 70s and you hear slasher film, the one thing you cannot do is you cannot go into this movie and expecting to see the same thing that you see in Halloween or Friday the 13th, or any of the copycat Halloween movies. This is not that type of slasher movie at all. This is...
Would you call it a proto-slasher?
Well, that's what I was going to say. This falls in line more with the Black Christmas type slasher movies than it does with the Halloween type slasher movies. And
interesting.
The main reason why I say that is because this movie starts off fairly gruesome, and it kind of starts off full bore, and goes top speed for a good, oh man, probably what, 20, 30 minutes?
Yeah.
And then, you know, you have kill after kill, and while they don't really show too much in the kills are actually fairly gruesome. But then you get, like I said, like 20, 30 minutes into the movie, and it sort of stops being a slasher movie, and then it turns into more of this crime, mystery, drama movie more than anything. It really takes a weird turn, and then it just like, you have like death, gore, boobs. Nothing. And it really kind of, it takes a really weird turn, and it goes from like, whoa, to like, really fast. And then it never really picks up again, really. I mean, there towards the end of it, you have some stuff that kind of starts to happen, but the momentum it has at the very beginning of the movie really never comes back into play throughout the movie, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does really kind of shoot its load early. It kind of becomes like all your kills you basically get in the beginning of the film, and it's like bam, 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 and then it like slows down, and then you kind of get some, you know, some issues with character. You get to build a little bit of the mystery of who's the killer and all of that. But yeah, it's interesting because I did look at when this film was released, and it was released in March of 1978. So Halloween was released in October of 78.
Yeah, okay.
So, right?
Yeah,
it came out before.
Yeah, it totally has that feel of, like I said, we've talked about before in previous episodes, where you can watch a movie, and certain movies you can definitely tell, like, oh, this movie came out in such and such time. And this movie, when you watch it, this movie really feels like a mid-70s horror movie, you know, just kind of a, just
exploitation,
right?
Drive-through, big time.
Now, though, there is one particular scene in this movie I do want to talk about.
The bathtub scene?
That would be it. Yep.
Oh, I was right.
And for those of you keeping score at home, we do not script these episodes at all. We do not talk about the episodes, what we're going to say at all before we record them. And if you listen to the show for any length of time, you know that we joke around about nudity in movies a lot, but I think people have probably picked up, well, hopefully you've picked up at least somewhat, that at least myself in particular, really there's a lot of nudity in movies that I feel is like completely unnecessary, at least in mainstream movies. Now, porn is something completely different, but you know, there's a lot of times when you're watching a movie and you're like, why is that person naked? But now, if you have listened to the show over the years, you do know that we have said probably more than once that the greatest nude scene in any horror movie is Barbara Crampton in Reanimator.
Yes, that's number one for sure.
And I'm going to say that. Now, I'm going to go. This is going to be a little bit long-winded here. So, one of the things that we said a couple episodes, or at least I said a couple episodes ago, is that if at all possible, when we're reviewing a movie, I'm going to try to get that movie on VHS and review it on VHS, to watch it on VHS, and then base my review off of that. And I bought this movie on eBay, which is whatever. And when I first started watching this movie, and it was kind of like, you know, I'm like, oh man, this is going to be one of those 70s movies. I just wasted my $15 on this movie. And then I got to the bathroom scene, which I am surprised I had never heard about this scene.
Really? You haven't?
I had never heard about this scene. I've heard about this movie. I've never heard about this scene.
Oh, yeah, you haven't researched the movie then, because once you start digging into this movie, that's one of the first things that they talk about. Holy
cow! You want to talk about pornographic? It gets to this bathroom scene, and there is this, and she is stunning.
Yes,
Absolutely
yes,
gorgeous girl in the bathtub, and she starts playing with herself. I am surprised I kept my pants on while I was watching that. As soon as that scene was over, I was like, oh, I would have given another $15 for this movie. That was totally worth it.
Yeah, that is the scene that makes this movie what it is in terms of its notoriety and all of that. But
wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so definitely now I think everybody right now is going on eBay and buying Toolbox Murders copies right now after that, description. Very much an exploitation film, wouldn't you say? I mean, like all across the board. This is something I imagine you probably saw at the drive-in movie theater.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Back in the late 70s. I mean, there were drive-ins, like, were they pretty popular in the late 70s? They must have been, right?
I would assume so, yeah.
So this was probably like a double feature with I don't know what late 70s horror could have been. Well, like I wanted to say Basket Case, but that was early 80s, but something like that, some kind of exploitation horror film. So basically it starts out, you've got this apartment complex, and there's this, what we think is like a maintenance guy going into a few of the rooms, and he's wearing a ski mask, and he basically just grabs whatever tool is in his toolbox and kills somebody. And they're pretty, I guess late 70s grisly deaths. I mean, it's not like extreme special effects gore. It's just, a lot of fake blood and that kind of thing, but certainly gets the job done. And so anyhow, he goes through and kills a bunch of people, and then the next day, there's like, well, what happened? And apparently he kidnapped like one of the girls from one of the apartments, and so the investigation, turns into who's the killer, and then where's the girl, and so we go from there to this, couple of teenagers or early 20 guys are starting to look forward to, figure things out for themselves, and they go and visit the crime scene, and then they decide to start looking around and seeing what happens, and they find out that the maintenance guy that works at this apartment complex seems kind of suspicious, and we go in from there, and I think that's where the movie turns, and we start to see some, I don't know, I guess you could say typical horror tropes, right? Where we try to find like the motive for our killers. Like, why is it that he did this?
The opening of the movie starts off great. It goes, like what you were saying before with the horror movie tropes, is you have this killer who's randomly picking these tools out of his toolbox. And my favorite one is like when he takes the drill and he's like, this movie I'm sure was not in 3D ever, but they're like doing all these weird like 3D shots with the drill,
Right.
And he's like thinking, okay, so they're screwing around with all this time. The guy is positioning this drill, getting a perfect shot. You have enough time to run down the street and get to the police station by now.
Yeah, and we should probably toss that in there too. Like, this isn't like a well acted film, or this is a B film for sure.
Definitely B film. I mean, this is, like you had said, this was probably one of those movies back in the late 70s that it's, came out in early 78. So Jaws probably was still making a run into theaters. So you probably had a triple feature at the drive-in that night, where it was Jaws and some other, B movie, and then the final movie of the night was Toolbox Murders. So, playing at 2:00 in the morning in the drive-ins.
Exactly. Yeah, this is we kind of talked about the concept of this being possibly a proto slasher, and being that, like, those films that were before we actually got the slasher genre as a title for, like a sub genre for the horror category. This was one of those films that probably, like you said, like Black Christmas, all those films prior to Halloween, I guess, because Halloween sort of, I think, set the tone to, that's where we ended up saying, okay, these are slasher films. Because after Halloween, we got Friday the 13th, My Bloody Valentine, and the list goes on and on. So this is that before they really had a template for a slasher film. You know, they had the madman, you know, going around killing people, but it didn't follow all the tropes. Like we didn't have a holiday, we didn't have, you know, some of the typical. It wasn't all teenagers, you know, they were more like kind of a mixed bag of adults and whatnot. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting, I guess you could say, proto slasher of that late '70s era.
The other thing too, besides the obviously notorious masturbation scene, which I was not aware of until now. Man, I cannot even imagine if I would have known about that. I would have had this movie on VHS in high school, and I would have been watching just that. I'm not lying. If you guys or girls, if you're into that kind of thing, if you have never seen this movie, and if you enjoy like pornographic stuff at all, it is probably better than masturbation scenes in porn. It is, you know, insanely good.
It's funny because I think now going back, like I started to think, when did I first see this film? And I think it was several years back when Shudder first came on the picture here, and the first time I got a subscription to that, and this was on there. And I remember like thinking, I don't have time to watch this whole thing. So I kind of fast forwarded through the whole thing. And I basically caught all the scenes. And probably that scene, the bathtub scene, was the first scene I saw. So that was my introduction to Toolbox Murders. But I knew about it because it was...
Oh, man.
I mean, I had researched the film prior. And like, you know, this is the first thing that comes up in all the searches and whatnot.
Yeah, I did not know about that. But the other thing I will mention about this movie that I found almost rather comical was, for some reason, the makers of this movie had decided that a minimal stomach wound somehow causes immediate death. Because there's like 2 or 3 times in this movie where somebody gets like poked in the stomach with a screwdriver and then he just falls over dead.
And that's it. Yeah, that's funny. Well, we should probably talk about the second half of the film, which, I don't know, it gets into a really goofy territory at that point. And then the ending, oh my gosh, like, how much do you want to spoil of this? Because, like, it's, like, to me, like, you know, I've read and I researched a lot of this film, and I had no idea how weird it was going to get towards the end.
Yeah, let's not completely give it away. I know in our early days that was our kind of our mantra, spoil everything, but
right.
I think we're pretty good about it anymore.
All right, we'll try to keep it in a little bit, but the first part of the movie, like you said, it's all the kills and all the thrills and everything, and then it goes into this. We find out what happened to the girl that was kidnapped, and we find out who the killer is, and then it gets really weird at that point, and it kind of it's awkward, and it has that sort of tourist trap sort of vibe to it. It's very goofy, and to me, it's like kind of goes back to that whole Psycho opened the door for psychological issues to be part of the killer's motive. With one of probably the worst car accident footage ever. I don't know. Did you see the scene where like the door opens and the girl like falls out?
Yeah, and that's I can't remember what movie were we talking about, because it totally reminded me of this other movie we were talking about where the camera kept going in and out and in and out. Do you remember?
Oh, was it Blood Island?
Oh, yeah, Blood Island. And so, I mean, that was a 60s movie, I guess, but
yeah.
But for some odd reason, the opening scene in this movie, they would do this where they would just wash the screen in red during this like flashback thing.
Oh, yeah.
And that's all I kept thinking about. Like, what is it with these old movies and like, oh, we don't actually know how to do like anything, so we're just going to do this one effect that we know, so we're just going to make the whole screen red.
Yeah, that was pretty much it. But yeah, it's an old film for sure, and it feels it, and it's a B movie, so don't go in thinking that this is going to be some amazing hidden gem or whatever, classic, and it's definitely a B horror film. You know, it shows how this show basically links back to Halloween and everything. It basically shows how John Carpenter's Halloween, which was probably filmed under the same mindset as this film, like another B movie, but was done by talented filmmakers, and it shows you the difference of quality of, like, you get a movie like that compared to this, where this one's far lower on the the category.
Well, and another thing that is worth mentioning about this particular movie is because this came out in 78, but it came out before Halloween. If you do any reading of this movie online, like I had already kind of compared it to Black Christmas, and I don't see the similarities at all. But another movie that it gets compared to is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You want to talk about full circle? This movie was remade in 2004, and the remake was actually directed by none other than Tobe Hooper.
Yeah, and I never visited that film. I never saw that, and I heard some mixed reviews on it, and I know that from what I understand, it has very little to do with this one in terms of storyline. And I guess that's another example too. Like Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out 4 years prior, and that film, in terms of quality and how good it is compared to this one, is like that's on a whole nother level. So it just shows you that like a B movie can go. The majority of them turn out like this, where they're basically just like a exploitation B movie, and then you get these gems in there like Texas Chainsaw Massacre that like actually are really good films.
So what do you give this movie?
Well, I have to go ahead and, for what it is, as a exploitation drive-through late 70s slasher film, not a very good film in terms of acting. They don't do a very good job of, the story is kind of weak. It's got in terms of like, the way they filmed it, the lighting and all that it's not well done either. Like again, compare that to Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw or John Carpenter's Halloween. And these guys are, for a reason, they've become legends in the genre. And that's why this film doesn't live up to that at all. This is like, just a B movie, total B movie. But having said that, that is exactly where it sits, and that's where it's supposed to be. This is supposed to be a kind of a trash film, and it's got one of the best, bathroom scenes ever. So I have to go ahead and give this one a thumbs up for that reason.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say that for it being what it is, I would give this one a thumbs up. I'm not going to classify this as a beer and popcorn movie. I don't know if a horror host would make this any more enjoyable for what it is. But I'm going to go ahead and give this another thumbs up for the masturbation scene. So this movie gets two thumbs up from me.
There you go. Oh, perfect.